All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. The Niner D line has been the focus of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan since they took over this regime. Looking at that D line this year, do you see it as a strength or is it a weakness? We'll discuss it coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. And this video is brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, along the Monterey Peninsula. Give my good buddy Anthony Catania a call. He's at 831-521-5264 for all your sports cards and collectible needs. Well, you know, there's a kind of a debate in Ninerland about different aspects of their roster. You know, some people think the offensive tackles are a major weakness. John Lynch said, hey, we like our tackles. We like Colton McKivitz. We like Jalen Moore. And obviously we like Trent Williams. So is the Niner offensive tackles, are they weak? Are they a weakness or are they a strength? Well, to listen to John Lynch talk about it, he likes them. He likes those guys. So sometimes the perception of the roster is different than the team's perception of their own roster. Sometimes the outside view of the roster is not how the Niners view themselves internally. A couple years ago, I think a lot of people thought, man, the Niners need a safety. They need to draft a safety. They need to get a safety. And they didn't go after a safety. But they really, really liked what they had in Talanoa Hufanga. And sure enough, Hufanga played a significant role at safety and became an all-pro player at safety. So, you know, and every year it seems like there's one or two spots where maybe the fans or the media think, man, they need a player at this position. And then they get into the draft and they don't draft anybody at that position. And then the team comes out and says, you know what, we really think we're pretty strong there. Well, one spot where the 49ers want to be very, very strong is the defensive line. And this has been an organizational philosophy that predates this regime. I mean, the Niners have valued defensive linemen going back to Pierce Holt, Kevin Fagan, Michael Carter, Ted Washington, Dennis Brown. I mean, you name it. The Niners drafted, even when they missed, Kentwan Balmer, Reggie McGrew. I mean, they've gone into the draft and looked for defensive linemen almost every year. And this regime is no different. Solomon Thomas, and then, Javon Kinlaw, and obviously the big free agent signing of Javon Hargrave. And Solomon Thomas was supposed to be a star, but he wasn't. And Kinlaw was supposed to be a star, but he wasn't. And the Niners just keep going D-line, D-line, D-line. Drake Jackson, second-round pick. Nick Bosa, first-round pick. And then in free agency, big play for Hargrave. This year, big play for Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott. I mean, the 49ers put a lot of resources into their defensive line. There's a lot of high picks typically on their defensive line. It's just the way it is. They value it. They draft these guys. It's like they believe in drafting defensive linemen and they believe in setting the tone. Everything gets done as far as the tone that's set up front on defense. So now their defensive line is supposed to be annually a strength of the defense. So I want to look at this year's D-line and let's talk about it, about what it actually is. Leonard Floyd did not have a lot of sacks down the second half of the year last year. And Leonard Floyd has played a lot of football. He's still a very good player, 6'6", 240. He's not old, but he's not young anymore either. He's 31. So what are they getting out of Leonard Floyd at 31 after he didn't have a hugely successful second half of the year? I think he only had one sack in the last stretch of the year. Then you had Nick Bosa, who won the Defensive Player of the Year award a couple years ago, 18 and a half sacks. Got paid and just took the money and ran and just wasn't nearly as good last year. 10 and a half sacks compared to 18 and a half. So he didn't produce nearly the same last year. Is he the same player that he even was a couple years ago? I don't know. I don't know. And then you got Javon Hargrave. He was given the big bag to leave Philadelphia and come to the Niners. And he's a terrific pass rusher. He hurt his thumb late in the year. He may not have been in great shape early. He had some hamstring issues. And I don't know if his legs were ever really in shape, but he was not nearly the player last year for the 49ers that he was the year prior with the Eagles. He still had, 7 sacks or so, but I mean, it was like 4 or 5 less than he had the year before in Philly. So how good's Javon Hargrave? Is Javon Hargrave entering his final year with the 49ers and he's a gigantic free agent bust? Or is Javon Hargrave going to have a major bounce back year and establish himself again as a top tier, top 5 or 6 defensive tackle in this league? So Floyd is 31, coming off of a very unproductive second half of the year. Bosa is coming off of a year where he wasn't nearly as good as he was 2 years ago. Hargrave doesn't stop the run at all and had 4 or 5 less sacks in San Francisco last year in his first year than he had the year before in Philly. You traded a 7th-round draft choice to the Houston Texans for Malik Collins. So that's what you have invested in Malik Collins. You kissed off on Eric Armstead. That's fine. You don't want to pay Armstead. He had chronic, plantar fasciitis, chronic knee pain. It was probably smart to move off of Armstead in year 10. But you didn't use a first-round pick on, Aurora or Michael Hall or anything. No, you didn't. You used a 7th-round pick to trade it to Houston for Malik Collins. And now basically a guy that you got for a 7th-round pick is supposed to start inside. So that's your first team D-line. Okay. Then your second team D-line. And you say, well, what is it? Why do I care about my second team D-line? Because it's your D-line. You have an offensive line. You have 5 starters across the board, left to right. You may start, if those guys stay healthy, all those same 5 guys every single snap all season. That's the way offensive line play usually works. The Niners have juggled some, the right guard spot a little bit. But other than that, the left tackle is the left tackle, the right tackle is the right tackle. You play every snap. On the defensive line, you play in a rotation. So if the Niners have 10 defensive linemen on a roster, 8 are up or 9 are up on game day, they play all 9. They play them in a rotation. So your backup defensive linemen matter. It matters because it's not like, they're just like, if a guy gets hurt, they're not an insurance policy. They're going to play. They're going to be playing 2 or 3 or 4 series over the course of the game. And they're going to be on the field. So they better be able to play. They better not be a dramatic step down from your starters, or you're probably going to be hurt when those guys are on the field. So who do the Niners have as their second team D-line? Well, they've got Yatir Gross-Matos, who is a big, strong, athletic, talented prospect who's never quite put it all together. Then there's Kevin Givens, who's a good pass rusher inside, but man, he took downs off in the NFC title game. There's Jordan Elliott, who was rated as the 6th best interior defensive tackle against the run by Pro Football Focus last year. We don't know what exactly he's going to bring to the table. It's his first year in this defense. There's Drake Jackson, who had a monster 3-sack performance at Heinz Field in week 1, played 4 or 5 more games and was done for the year, and had strength issues and durability issues. And we just don't know if he's an every down guy in the NFL. And then who's on that third team line? Robert Beal barely played at Georgia, flashed a little bit in camp at times, flashed a little bit late in the year, but there's no track record of any kind of consistent success or production from Beal anywhere. Kalia Davis is, decently fast prospect who's had knee problems. T.Y. McGill's a journeyman defensive tackle. Austin Bryant's a journeyman defensive end. Then you got Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown at defensive tackle. They're intriguing young prospects, undrafted college free agents over the last couple of years. But you look at that defensive line and you're sitting there going, okay. This team wasn't that long ago. They had Charles Omenihu, Samson Ebukam, Hassan Ridgeway. They had greater depth than they have right now. They eliminated a lot of their depth to go sign Javon Hargrave to give themselves another interior pass rusher. And he was okay, but they lost some really key run defenders and they weren't very good against the run. They weren't good against the run in the preseason. They weren't good against the run in the playoffs. They weren't good against the run in the Super. I mean, they really weren't good against the run at any point this year. Only their offense scoring 30 plus points a game was probably the best thing you could say about their ability to stop the run. They just took teams out of, there was a half dozen games there. They blew out the Cowboys. They blew out the New York Giants. They blew out the Cardinals. They had some games where they got big leads, Pittsburgh, where teams just stopped running on them in the second half. And that made it look like their run D was good. But in reality, they lost a lot of really quality run defenders, making an all-out free agent assault on Javon Hargrave. So you lost a lot of good run defenders. And then Hargrave came in, and he wasn't quite the pass rusher he was in Philly. And now here we are, a year later. You're hoping he bounces back. You're hoping Bosa bounces back. You're hoping Leonard Floyd has a double-digit sack season. You don't know what you're getting out of Malik Collins. I don't know that you can say with any assurances, with any, certainty, what you're getting out of Drake Jackson, Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, or Yatir Gross-Matos on, your twos, let's say. I don't know what the threes are giving you either, with Beal and Austin Bryant, T.Y. McGill, Kalia Davis, Shaquille Brown, Evan Anderson. I don't know who's going to be on the threes, and I don't know if they're going to give you a whole lot. So the Niner D-line, it was a major, major strength in the first year of this regime. You had DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, and Dee Ford. And most of those guys were in their prime, playing at a really high level, and they went to the Super Bowl. They've tried to maintain and continue to build up their defensive line, but they swung and missed on Kinlaw. They swung and missed on Solomon Thomas. They've missed on some of their D-line picks, and they're trying like crazy to fill in with undrafted guys and street free agents. To me, this 49er defensive line on paper looks like it's a major strength. But I'll say this. If they don't get something significant out of Jordan Elliott, who hasn't done it yet, Drake Jackson hasn't done it yet, Yatir Gross-Matos hasn't done it yet, Robert Beal Jr. hasn't done it yet. If those four guys, who none of them have really done it yet, don't show that they're players, same with Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown, if some of these backups don't show that they've got game, this defensive line could go from they're deep and loaded and incredibly talented to they're thin and challenged. So is the D-line a strength? It could be. If Leonard Floyd dials it back to the Leonard Floyd that we remember with the Rams and not the Leonard Floyd that we saw in the second half of the year in a Buffalo uniform, then yeah. If Javon Hargrave looks like the player he was 2 years ago in Philly instead of the player he was last year in San Francisco, then yeah. If Malik Collins can give them good run inside, if Jordan Elliott can give them good run inside, if Drake Jackson or Robert Beal or Yatir Gross-Matos, if any of these guys come of age as young veterans, then yeah. If Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown are, surprise badasses as undrafted college free agents, it's possible. Then maybe the D-line's a strength. But if Floyd is, worse this year than he was last year, if Hargrave, isn't going to give you anything against the run and only 6 or 7 sacks, if Malik Collins plays like a player who was acquired for a 7th round pick, if Bosa doesn't bounce back to be the Bosa from 2 years ago, if Drake Jackson and Robert Beal and Jordan Elliott and Yatir Gross-Matos and Kevin Givens, some of these young defensive linemen don't continue to ascend and improve as they go, absolutely this 49er defensive line could turn out to be a weakness and not a strength. So, on the first blush, you say, oh, come on, man. They got Hargrave and Floyd and Bosa. There's some big names. They've had some big names on this line the last couple of years. They got some big names this year. Leonard Floyd, Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa. Oh, my God. Everybody knows these guys. Okay. Can they still play? Can they still produce? Can they get heat on the quarterback? Can they contain the run? Last year, they didn't do a lot of that. They didn't put enough heat on Mahomes in the Super Bowl. They didn't stop the run nearly well enough. The group overall needed to be turned over and was turned over. And that's why in Floyd and Collins and Elliott and Gross Matos and Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown, I mean, they added 6 new defensive linemen to their room. They're probably only going to keep 10. So, basically half the room is a brand new room. So is the 49er defensive line a strength? I would say it's potentially a strength, but it's also potentially a weakness. And I think that's being completely objective. I'm rooting for him, and I'm excited by Shaquille Brown. I'm excited by Evan Anderson. I still believe that Drake Jackson and Robert Beal can produce, but there's question marks there. And the depth is not what it was. And I don't see a Samson Ebukam in this bunch on the second unit. And I don't see a Charles Omenihu here. And I don't see a young DJ Jones here. And I'm not sure exactly what they have outside of their starters. Heck, I'm not even 100% sure what they're getting out of Hargrave and Collins in the middle. And they're the ones. So is the Niner D-line a strength? Possibly. But it could be a weakness as well. And I'd love to hear your comments below, because to me, this is a major part of this upcoming season. If the Niner defensive line reestablishes itself as a major strength, they're a Super Bowl contender, and maybe they're the Super Bowl favorite. If their Niner defensive line shows itself as not really up to snuff and a weakness, you can take them right out of the Super Bowl situation, and they're a second-tier team at best. So this is a major, major question going into the year. Is the D-line a strength? Is the D-line a weakness? I could see it being going either way. Tell me what you think below. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.